Delighted to welcome to the Friday Club a broadcasting legend. Robert Hall, he may smirk, but he's certainly viewed in those within that prism. Robert, thank you so much for joining the show. The news emerged this week in the racing press that you are about to experience your last 2 days fronting the coverage of RTE's racing at the Dublin Racing Festival. A lot of people are looking at it with a tinge of sadness. How do you look at the next 2 days?
Thank you for your intro, and it's very nice that people are looking at it that way. Do you know something? It has crept up so quickly. I haven't given it a whole lot of thought. I know that on Sunday, the lower lip will be quivering probably, but I've had a wonderful, wonderful time. It's been a long time. Everything, you've got to move on. 37 years has flown by, and I'm hugely grateful to RTE, and I followed my dream. And I suspect that's what you're doing. And isn't it lovely to be doing something that you love so much, and you love the participants, and you admire the animals, and it's been a joyride. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely. So lucky to be doing what we're doing. But take us back to before the 37 years started and your passion for racing above all else.
That began very early. I was born into a horsey family. We kept ponies, and I had 2 elder sisters, have 2 elder sisters, obviously. But, from the age of 6, I actually wanted to be a commentator. And I was a pain in the backside to my parents, because I would deliver my conversation in commentary and that sort of stuff, So then it all began, I suppose. I wrote to all the hunt secretaries asking could I be their point-to-point commentator. And the County Clare Foxhounds, they said, come on down. So that was wonderful. They had 2 point-to-points. They had one at Dromoland and one at Scariff. And there were wonderful horses down in that part of the world then. And you had the Hassets and the Costellos, Pat Hogan, all these sort of people. And I found it very daunting, but I was put up on a hoist with the parish priest. And he knew everything. It was absolutely wonderful. You'd have 16 runners in the race. But he'd be able to say, that horse will only jump 2. He's going to pull up after a circuit. He missed a bit of work during the week. He knew everything. Yeah. So, suddenly
you're blessed.
Yes.
With your colours, when you're doing the colours for point-to-point, you have to do it yourself. You actually have to draw the colours in, don't you?
Well, I tell you what, I got a stamp made and I did all this sort of stuff. But it really, by the time you put in, and you have dry inks, and I tried to go about it very studiously. But people don't ride in the colours that they're supposed to ride in. And your declarations are half an hour before the race, and I'd go into the jockey's room and it would be steaming, and there'd be people putting on colours and taking off colours, and it was a big learning curve.
Many of the great careers in broadcasting, certainly in racing, have almost happened somewhat fortuitously. How did you end up from dreaming as a 6-year-old, wanting to be a commentator, to getting a slot on RTE?
Well, I got a call from RTE saying, would I like to audition for radio commentator, do you see? At the time, Des Cahill was the radio commentator, but he got more money from going to Down Royal and Downpatrick than he did from RTE. So, he went where the money was. So there were vacancies on the radio show. Yeah. And 3 of us turned up here at Leopardstown one day, and we went up to the commentary position, and the producer said, right, who's going to do the first? I got the 3rd race. I got a 7-runner handicap. The first guy had no hope. The second guy had little hope. I got terribly lucky, and I did it reasonably, I think, 7 runners. And he said, okay, what are you doing on Saturday week or something? And along came the Irish 2000 Guineas, won by Durham Monarch, 1982. I remember Robert Sangster had three runners in the race, which scared the daylights out of me. But anyway, we got Durham Monarch first across the line, and I did that for quite a few years, just doing it on and off. But it was hard to do, because you really want to be doing commentary preferably every day, but certainly on a regular basis, because as royal blue, once it goes into the washing machine 10 times, it becomes pale blue. Pale blue a mile away becomes white.
Absolutely.
And your glasses are shaking. But I think they were exciting commentaries, because I really didn't know what was happening. And, the horses came from the clouds that hadn't been mentioned all through the race. It was fun.
Sounds like fun. You also did a little bit of auctioning.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Where did that
I did 40 years of auctioning because my father, do you see, he was manager of Goffs. So I began at a terribly young age. I began doing end-of-day sales. These were the horses that had had a shot at it, you know. So really you couldn't go too far wrong, and they came in with that reserve. And so I began doing them, and I was with Goffs for 40 years. Had some wonderful times with them, sold some funny horses and had some...
Sold a Derby winner, is that right?
I sold a Derby, I did, good research. I sold a Derby winner, I sold New Approach. I didn't have any enjoyment selling him, I can tell you. He made 480,000, but we knew... My father, funny enough, actually a little interesting thing that I found out later, he had sold the cheapest Derby winner of the 20th century. He sold Hard Ridden, the 58 winner, and he made 270 guineas. New Approach made 480,000, so inflation had...
So he was the most expensive.
He was at the time, he was. I think Australia, subsequently, he made more. But yeah, that was an interesting sale, New Approach. Jim Bolger bought him, and I knew we were in huge trouble beforehand, because although 480,000 sounds a lot, he was by Galileo, only the second crop of Galileo, but he was out of Park Express. And the Arabs, the Cold War had begun, so the Arabs weren't going to buy a Coolmore sire, and I think that Coolmore probably shunned him because he was out of a 21-year-old mare, or you know, the mare was 21 when he was conceived. So with those two out of the game, you know, we was
all those years of experience played his part in getting it up to 480, was it?
Thank you, Rishi.
So let's concentrate on the broadcasting career. So when you got the call for commentary, you did that. You came along as a radio commentator. What was your training to be a broadcaster?
Oh, none, absolutely not. No, I got lucky all the time, because the radio, much as I enjoyed it, I didn't improve from the very first commentary I did. I just didn't improve. You know, you want to be doing it all the time. But luckily, there was, you know, the wonderful Tony Sweeney, who was he was paddock commentator for RT for a long time, and I began filling in for him now and again, you know, and that led to the presentation. There was a wonderful head of sport called Tim O'Connor at the time, lovely man, and he took a shine to me as a broadcaster and gave me every encouragement. And I began doing the show jumping as well, and I mean, I think we've met at Olympics. So that was
Athens. I think we first
absolutely.
So you started doing the presenting. You formed a great partnership with Ted Walsh. Perhaps as good a partnership as there's been on racing television.
You're so kind to say so.
Why did that work so well?
Because we're so different. But we have a common love. And I enjoy Ted hugely. He was a pal of mine, he is a pal of mine, and will always be a pal of mine. And funny enough, there's a little synergy there, because when I was 6 years old, I remember the very first time I was in Ted's house was to go and collect a pony, and the pony was, funny enough, called Ruby. It came up from somebody called Ned Hannigan down the country, but they'd named the pony after Ted's dad. And, you know, as a broadcasting companion, he's been fantastic. He's a superb broadcaster. He's got a wonderful sense of humour. He's got an incredible knowledge. He's a very kind person. He is incendiary, but that adds to the charm in a way. Do you know what I mean? He's very much his own man, and we get on great.
You mentioned his personality. Your personality seems, if anybody watched RT over that period of time, they would think Robert Hall is Mr. Restrained. He's very calm, cool, always in control of the situation. Is that you by nature?
Oh no, golly no. No, but I love live television as you do. Do you know, you don't get a second take, and it's
rather embarrassing at times.
It's still, do you know, I mean, tomorrow there'll be nervous moments, or there'll be tension. Do you know, it'll be interesting. It'll be fun.
Have you got a routine of how you deal with your own nerves?
No. No, I just take it as it comes. But, you know, there's always so much to think about. You sort of get away from nerves.
And what sort of level of preparation do you get for a day like tomorrow, or the 2 days? How deep do you delve into what's to come?
Well, I present the show and I do the form and I do the interviews. So the form, you've got to look at your form book and you've got to play a few races, and I would be talking to our producer in advance, and I've got a really nice interview lined up for Sunday. It'll be very busy. It'll be very, very busy. Sunday's interview is interesting, actually, because it's the director of the Irish Prison Service. Now, you may ask why, but in this country we have from April, we're going to have an opportunity for all prisoners to help their rehabilitation and work with horses at a prison.
Right.
So we've built this wonderful barn down in Castlerea in Roscommon, where it so happens there are quite a lot of travellers, 31% travellers. Travellers love horses, but we want to teach them how to look after horses, and hopefully it'll help them reintegrate into the world. And it's worked in America and it's worked in Australia. It's never been tried in Europe, not like we're doing it, and it's going to be hugely exciting.
Sounds very noble as well. What would be some of the best memories, if you don't mind me moving it on to, during your time, some of the challenges that you felt that you overcame as a broadcaster, or a particularly difficult situation that you dealt with really well?
Well, I suppose the most difficult situation was the bomb scare in the Irish Derby Day a long, long time ago. That where everybody evacuated, nobody knew where anybody was, and I don't know that I necessarily dealt with it well. But there've been wonderful, wonderful days, and any horse that brings a crowd, you have horses like Desert Orchid was quite phenomenal. He won the Irish National giving 2 stone to a horse of Ted's, Barney Burnett. What a horse he was. Those sort of horses, Denoli was a great, great favourite of mine. I think the expression is he wore his heart on his sleeve. He was wonderful, and he was trained by a lovely man, owned by a lovely man, ridden by a lovely man. Everything about him was lovely. And he never won at Cheltenham. Well, he won as a novice hurdler, but those sort of horses I'd give my back teeth for.
I'm going to ask you to stay with us if it's okay. We're going to be joined by another legend of broadcasting, Nick Luck, very shortly.
Good.
But the thing that I'd like to finish this little segment on is when you look back at your period as the main man, the main anchor for RTE's racing, what's the thing that would satisfy you most about what you've done?
I'm still here. Seriously.
Fought off the challenges.
Well, 37 years was a long time. I'll tell you what, when we produced the programme, it was wonderful, because RTE had a directive, or the government, I think, gave RTE a directive that 25% of budget or airtime had to be independently produced. And that was I saw that as an opportunity, and I formed a company with John Fairley, who you know well, and has produced Channel 4 Racing and done all sorts of things in broadcasting. And I think it was at a time when there was a bit of money around, and we were able to produce fabulous shows, and we had all the gizmos and toys. We had blimps in the air and Jimmy Jibs and super slows and steady cams and all that sort of stuff. And I enjoyed those days hugely.
Well, 2 more of those to go. 2 more of those days to go. And of course, Nick Luck will be here for Racing TV. You'll be here for RTE. We'll be catching up with both of you a little bit more after this next race from Dundalk. So don't go anywhere. We'll probably get a few more stories about some of the great days of broadcasting from Robert. Maybe 1 or 2 stories about Ted Walsh as well. But we're heading back to Kevin at Dundalk. Well, earlier tonight on the Friday Club, we were delighted to have one broadcasting legend from RTE, Robert Hall. I am now flanked by another. Nick Luck, Racing TV, international broadcaster extraordinaire. Lucky, how are you?
It's great, Rich, to be on your show. It's a great idea, this show, by the way.
I know.
We should do something like this on a Sunday.
Should you?
Yes, definitely.
Should you really?
Definitely.
Speaking of which, it's coming live from Leopardstown on Sunday?
It is, in this very spot, in this very seat. Robert's sparring partner for so many years, Ted Walsh, will be along first time on the show. Jessica Harrington, I'm thrilled, because she's always wanted, well, I say she's always wanted to come on. It's not her lifetime ambition.
She's always wanted to come on my show. I wish you'd said it.
She has been willing to come on for some time, but obviously we've come here, so that makes life easier. And Richard Forrestal making his Racing TV debut, which will be interesting.
Lovely.
Yeah.
A great lineup of guests.
And Jack Cantillon as well, one of the brightest young minds in racing. So.
Tremendous. And you are also here for Racing TV over the 2 days, working with what team?
Gary will be steering the ship, and I will be very happy to be a part of it, and reporting tomorrow and Sunday, and it's just unbelievable. It's better than last year, and last year was good enough. So.
That was the first time you covered it for Racing TV
First
last
time
year?
I'd covered it for Racing TV last year, first time Racing TV had covered it, came back for the Irish Champions weekend, and I mean this racecourse, I know Robert will agree with me, every time you come it gets better and better, and they're building it into something that is going to be a real state-of-the-art venue for Irish racing. And I think we were talking about getting people to the races, and certainly attendance trends falling in Britain. Leopardstown doing their very best to buck that trend by just improving all the time. And I think people just expect and want a better experience from racecourses now.
It should be wonderful, this. Yeah. Golly, I hope it is, because the track out there is second to none, and it has been in need of a revamped Leopardstown, and it's going to happen, and very soon we'll be in it, and it'll be brilliant, hopefully. Yeah.
Robert, I spoke to Jane and Johnny, and look, I'd love to hear what you think about this, at the start of the show, about how this Dublin Racing Festival has got to the status it's got to in such a short space of time. It's set a template for other countries, other nations who wish to create something out of nothing almost. In fairness, there was a basis, the skeleton to work from. But how did they attract the horses that they did? How did they develop something that's already, I mentioned getting in the taxi from the airport, and the guy said to me, which one are you here for, the racing or the rugby? It's already been mentioned in the same breath. How did they do that?
Funny enough, I thought about it a long time ago, and I sent a letter to the chairman of Leopardstown possibly 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Nothing happened, so I wasn't taken in, but it happened then, and credit to the people who made it happen. We had 3 meetings after Christmas, January and a couple in February, and single meetings. It was an obvious call to get 2 proper days, 8 grade 1s, huge amount of money, and proper horses. This is going to grow. It would be lovely to see more runners from your country, maybe. Why are they not coming, do you think? Is it are they there, or what?
Well, obviously, as is the case here, such a huge proportion of the top horses are in so few hands that those decisions in the Grade 1 races rest on 1, 2, 3, 4 people, really. The Hendersons, the Nicholls, and maybe Dan Skelton, 1 or 2 others. And Nicky Henderson's MO in terms of getting horses ready for Cheltenham has always been the same. It's always been conservative from Christmas to Cheltenham. So it's probably unrealistic to expect him to change his style. I'm quite surprised that somebody like Paul Nicholls mightn't have targeted 1 or 2 of the races here, because
he's been one of the more adventurous.
Yeah, because he's so enterprising. And it was only a few years ago that he said, I'm going to go to Ireland more. So I'd love to see him in Ireland more. I saw a tweet the other day from Anthony Bromley, who's bought so many good horses, so many top horses, so many Cheltenham winners, and would now have horses that he's bought in Gordon Elliott's yard and Willie Mullins' yard. He's saying, well, what's the point in British trainers bringing horses over when they know they're going to be beaten? Look how well the Irish do at Cheltenham. But I'm not sure you can sort of frame it in such a fortress mentality. I get it on the flat when you're coming to take on Aidan O'Brien in the Irish Derby and he's got 7 runners. I understand why you might not want to, but I think here it's slightly different.
Well, we've seen what Nicky Richards can do,
Exactly. And Warren Greatrex last year with La Bagovois, and it's great to see her back.
Yeah.
So bring him on, bring him here.
Why do you think, what has been the essence of the success of the festival so far in such a short space of time?
Well, I think the slot was here and the races were here, and it just needed sort of minor reorganisation, and then it needed a lot of promotion. So it's obviously been promoted right. Probably the same timing as the Six Nations hasn't done it any harm. People talk about moving the Cheltenham Gold Cup to a Saturday and competing with other sporting attractions. Maybe the other sporting attractions would cast a glow on something in horse racing, and the 2 things could grow together. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but clearly that hasn't done any harm.
Let's move and talk back about broadcasting, because that's what the 2 of you specialise in. And some of the people that you enjoyed sparring with, some of the characters in the sport that you enjoyed sparring with, and perhaps others that you didn't enjoy sparring with.
We've got a lot of characters in this country, and I mean, horsey people, they're earthy, they're knowledgeable, they're wonderful, and from all around the country, they produce things. I love people who can land a good bet and that sort of stuff. And we've had that historically. It's very hard to do now because gambling and betting have changed. The landscape is not what it used to be, and that's a huge thing. I think it's one of the things going forward that has to be addressed. There've been lots of characters, I have to say, without naming any particular one.
No, lots of characters. Lucky, you should be careful if you're going to name any characters that you found challenging in horse racing, perhaps?
Challenging in horse racing?
Yeah, somebody that, a lot of people give you stuff. When you go to interview them, they're automatically willing to talk. Generally, you're interviewing people most of the time, 75% of the time, in a positive light. Something good has happened. What about ones that you found it's going to be, it's going to be hard, perhaps it's an awkward situation?
Well, it's going to be hard because of the subject matter. I mean, my mind's taken back to, I think it was 2014 at Ascot, when I was interviewing Sir Michael Stoute, with whom I get on very well, just as you do. But at the time, he was embroiled in a difficult situation where a horse had, I think, failed a test. Was that right? Was it a horse of the Queen's who'd failed a test? And I had to interview him about his upcoming runner in the King George, who was Telescope. And if I hadn't asked him the question about the test, then people would have said, well, you haven't asked the obvious question that people at home want to hear. So I could have bottled it, didn't bottle it, but then kept walking. It was a walk and talk. So normally you get 3 questions and he shuffles off. But because we were walking and talking, he couldn't escape.
You matched his turn of foot.
I matched his turn of foot.
Well done.
And then it kept going and going and going. And the further it kept going, the harder I kept sort of digging the hole. And in the end, it was quite an uncomfortable situation. But it was fine. We saw each other 3 days later, and he was saying, fine, I completely understand why you had to ask the question. But sometimes you just have to keep going, don't you?
We had a situation, again, 20 years ago probably, where Artie had a very good idea that somebody would be brought to me on each of the 3 days of the Christmas meeting who wasn't a trainer or a jockey or an owner and this sort of stuff. And they employed the social writer from the Independent, and she brought me up somebody during the ad break. And this is on day 1. She said, this is so-and-so, this is what he does, this is why he's here, whatever. And everything went grand. Then the second day, she brought me up this magnificent lady with a mane of chestnut hair, and she told me who she was, and she ended up by saying, because the owner he was called Pierre, she met Pierre because she used to go out with his son. Anyway, this all came out on air, and it was awfully funny. I cannot tell you the whole story, but it was one of the embarrassments of television. It was fun.
Rishi, what's been your most awkward/embarrassing moment? I mean, I was going to say so many to choose from.
So many. Been stuck between you two for a start. No, loads. I mean, I've made so many faux pas over the years. It's embarrassing to even start thinking about it now. It makes me blush. From the time of Omaha City, dear old Big Mac forcing me into picking a horse that looked unwell. He said, you've got to find a paddock negative.
You've got to find a paddock negative.
You've got to find a paddock negative. I don't really have one, but Omaha City was sweat. It's what I said. He's sweating up in the paddock. He hasn't run for ages. Of course, he was 50-1, and he absolutely bolted up.
That was fun.
So I've laughed it off, thankfully. But there've been a few. I once got some bad advice from someone when Ascot was up at York. If you remember that meeting.
Yep.
Obviously, Racti was favourite for the Queen Anne. And somebody said, it was agreed in the production meeting that I would go and be on Racti watch because he was given special permission to be boxed up and taken across the Knavesmire to be brought over to the stables. So I was sent down to see his arrival, do a live piece there, or recorded, depending. So anyway, I'm down there. The producer says, how are you getting on with Racti? I said, he's just coming now. So I said to the guy, is that definitely Racti? He goes, yeah, Racti's coming in the box now. Obviously, Racti was a big, strong horse. So the box opened, and the producer said, we'll come to you now if you don't mind. So, okay, yeah, good to go. And Racti, or the box with Racti, that opened up, and this horse came out as calm as a lamb. So they cut to me and they cued me, and I went, well, away from the hubbub. I remember away from the hubbub of the St James's Palace Stakes.
He was an unmistakable horse, wasn't he?
Away from the hubbub.
Did you do your David Attenborough?
Of the St James's Palace Stakes. The favourite for the Queen Anne, Racti, has just arrived in horse box. And I'm delighted to say he is calm and cool. positive signs for his chance in the Queen Anne Stakes. And this horse came a bit closer, and they cut off me, and he walked past. This horse was about 14 hands, and also he was half the size physically of Racti. So I said to the lad, I said, "Who's that?" And it was a horse of Henry Cecil's that was running in a later race, Sir Henry Cecil. And I was distraught, and I said to my producer, I said, "I'm really sorry, but that wasn't Racti."
I led to Henry Cecil after he'd won the. I interviewed him after he'd won the Oaks, and I said, "Henry, we're gonna see how your filly, where she makes her challenge from," and we had the monitor down there, and I hadn't looked at it. Anyway, he said, "All I can see are women playing tennis," and it was during Wimbledon, and we hadn't put the pictures across because I'd say they were looking at the ladies' final in the truck, and it came over onto our monitor.
I don't think there was anyone who could wither you in an interview like Sir Henry Cecil if he wanted to. You know, he's a great man, but if you know the line of questioning wasn't going his way, he just had a neat way of just.
Oh, absolutely.
The obvious one was, well, what do you think?
So he did that to me once.
You're going to run in the Royal Ascot. What do you think I should do? Should you think I should run there? Or when there was all the talk about Frankel running against Black Caviar and they should drop Frankel back to 6 furlongs.
I did that.
Did you do that as well?
That might have been me, lucky. I said to him, after he won the St James's Palace, and obviously he'd gone like a bat out of hell, as we know, shouldn't have done, but he did. And he was folding up in the closing stages. So in the post-race interview, I said, Sir Henry, one or two people have suggested that maybe Frankel needs dropping back in trip. He just looked at me and went, "What do you think?" I don't know. I'm just, and he went, "He'll never drop back in trip."
Well, July course one day that season or the next season, I asked him about taking on Black Caviar, and we went down this line of questioning. He said, "Well, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't run Usain Bolt at 1,500 metres." Carried on, and he had a film crew following him round because Frankel had reached sort of superstar status by then. It's the CNN film crew. He turned around and went, "CNN here. Sorry, you're not the only pebble on the beach." And off he walked. And that was just left hanging there. You're not the only pebble on the beach. Needless to say, early days of social media, everyone piles in. "Well done, Henry. Tell him."
Robert, we're running out of time. I'd love this chat to continue. But obviously you have got to get yourself ready, ever the professional, for the next 2 days. What will you miss when Sunday's broadcast ends?
Oh, the buzz of live broadcast. It's a lovely adrenaline rush. When you're getting mic'd up and you've got your producer in your ear saying 2 minutes, and somebody says your tie's not straight just as the camera comes round. All that sort of stuff. I love it. Absolutely love it. But I mean, I'm going to be on the racecourse, and I love the horses, so it'll be more relaxed. But I'll miss the buzz big time. Of course, I will.
Miss the buzz. Will you come on the Friday Club in the future?
Not
luck on Sunday.
You just asked me. Yeah,
Brilliant.
Of course I will.
Perfect. I mean, to do an elongated interview,
why
not
not?
just a couple of segments.
I think the partnership that Robert's got with Ted, and you were talking about it earlier, it's so rare in broadcasting. It really is to have
the perfect mix,
the perfect partnership, that chemistry that so few people have. I mean, I know there's been partnerships in horse racing, Willie Carson, Claire Balding, and John Frankham and Jim McGrath, but Robert and Ted complement each other so beautifully that I think RTE are going to really, really miss that. And,
Thank you.
All the best, Robert, in
thank you.
Whatever the future holds. Many appearances on the Rishi Prasad
show. In fact, you can have a regular slot on it. Certainly the weeks when I'm...
And I don't know about you, but I look at Robert and I massively envy his calm in all situations. I find myself getting so caught up in the moment sometimes that I really envy that ability to just...
Nick, come on.
Take the audience.
We're all pulling the wool over people's eyes.
Completely. Totally.
Stop telling them. Don't let them know.
Don't tell them.
Don't tell them. Sport.
Endorse everything the great man says. Robert, enjoy the next couple of days. I know it will be poignant when the programme titles run on Sunday, but I hope you can enjoy it. And thank you.
Been fun. And very best of luck. And I've really enjoyed my time here. Thank you,
brilliant
Nick.
having you.
Thank you, Rishi.
It's almost with deep sadness that we say goodbye to Robert for now, and we have to go back to our dear friend Kevin at Dundalk.